The rain had not stopped all evening, needling through the broken umbrella Sarah clutched as she hurried her son across the cracked sidewalk. Her boy's sneakers were soaked through, the rubber soles peeling, duct tape trying and failing to hold one shoe together. In her tote bag rattled the remains of groceries, a half loaf of bread, a few eggs, and a jar of peanut butter. She had counted coins at the self-checkout, cheeks flushed as the screen blinked insufficient before she removed one egg carton to make the total work. She told herself it was fine, that she could stretch it the way she stretched everything now. But what she didn't know, what no one watching from the warm cafe windows suspected, was that tonight a soaked stranger she chose to help would alter her future in ways she could never imagine. And he was not just anyone. He was the man who had quietly stepped into the role of CEO of the company she had once worked for before life fell apart. Her son, Luke, tugged her sleeve.
"Mom, I'm cold." His lips trembled as he spoke.
She brushed his wet hair back, kissed his forehead, and told him they were almost home, though home was just a dim one-bedroom with a flickering kitchen bulb and an eviction notice curling at the bottom of the door. She carried the weight of her widowhood silently, never letting the boys see how raw her heart still was. At the bus stop, she noticed him, a tall man in a soaked blazer, expensive leather shoes ruined by puddles, standing with no umbrella. His sharp jaw was unshaven, and rain dripped down his temple. He looked out of place, not only because of the tailored cut of his clothes, but because his eyes, though piercing, were searching for something, anywhere to land. Sarah hesitated. She never spoke to strangers. But Luke shivered harder, and the man, noticing them, offered the bench space. "Here," he said, his voice low but clear. "Let him sit." She studied him, wary. His watch was gleaming even in the dim streetlight, a brand she had once glimpsed only in glossy ads.
Why was he at this bus stop instead of inside a cab?
Something about the way he held himself, shoulders squared despite being drenched, felt almost too composed. "Thank you," she whispered, guiding Luke onto the seat. The bus arrived late, its windows fogged from the breath of tired passengers. Inside, Sarah and Luke sat opposite the stranger. He kept glancing toward her bag as if noticing how light it looked, how she clutched it to her chest. When the driver finally stopped at her street, Sarah stood. The man rose too, but the bus jolted and his phone slipped from his pocket. She saw the cracked screen, the wallpaper, of some skyline. "You dropped this," she said, handing it back. Their eyes met for a second too long. His were dark, restless. By the time she reached the building, Luke dragging behind, she heard footsteps. The stranger again? He seemed lost, scanning addresses. "Sorry," he said, his voice more hesitant now. "The hotel nearby is full."
"My app isn't working and I don't know this neighborhood well," she stiffened.
A stranger asking for help at night. Every instinct told her to close the door. But Luke's small voice cut in, "Mom, he's wet."
"Can he come in?"
Her throat tightened. She could say no, but she remembered too vividly the nights she had needed help, and no one had offered.
"Just for tonight," she said firmly. "There's a couch." Inside, the contrast hit.
The bulb flickered overhead, the fridge hummed with emptiness, and the air smelled faintly of damp carpet. She spread an old blanket over the couch, apologizing that it wasn't much. The man looked around quietly, his jaw tightening, as though seeing the fragile seams of her life. Luke curled into bed, whispering goodnight. The man remained on the couch, rainwater still darkening his shirt. Sarah brought him a chipped mug of tea, hands trembling slightly. "You didn't have to," he said, his voice softer than before. "You looked like you needed it," she replied, setting it down. For a moment, silence.
Only the hum of the fridge.
Then he asked carefully, "Do you live here alone?" "With my son," she answered shortly. "Since my husband passed," his eyes lowered.
"I'm sorry." He brushed a hand over his forehead, rain-damp hair falling loose.
Something about the way he said it was too genuine, not pitying. Hours later, when she checked if he was asleep, she found him still awake, staring at the ceiling as if carrying his own shadows. She couldn't know the weight on his shoulders, the pressure of taking over a vast corporation, the loneliness that came with wealth. She couldn't know that tomorrow she would see him step into a car she thought belonged to someone else entirely. But for now, the storm pressed against the windows, and inside the fragile apartment 2 lives brushed together, stranger and widow, both holding secrets neither dared to name. Morning light crept through the thin curtains, revealing the small apartment's floors in sharper relief. The wallpaper peeling near the ceiling, the second-hand chair with one leg propped by stacked magazines, the fridge humming hollow with barely anything inside. Sarah stood at the sink, rinsing a cracked plate, her damp hair tied back loosely.
Luke rummaged in his backpack, the duct tape frayed along its seam.
He pulled out a crumpled worksheet and frowned. The stranger sat up on the couch, his shirt wrinkled, but somehow still carrying that cut of refinement. He watched her quietly, almost too intently. "Thank you," he said finally, "for letting me stay. Most people wouldn't." Sarah turned, shrugging it off.
"I don't usually, but—"
"You looked like you needed help." She poured weak coffee into a chipped cup, sliding it toward him. His fingers brushed the handle, pausing. "What about you? You look like you've needed help for a long time." Her breath caught, her lips tightening. "I manage." But as she spoke, Luke tugged at her sleeve. "Mum, can we get milk today?"
"The cereal's too dry." The words hung in the air, sharp as glass.
Sarah's cheeks warmed, and she quickly told her son to get his jacket. The stranger's gaze lingered on her. He wanted to ask questions, but instead he said, "Can I walk you both to school?" She hesitated. "Why?" He gave a faint smile. "Maybe I want to know the city better. Maybe I don't want to say goodbye just yet." Outside, the streets gleamed wet from last night's storm. Sarah's sneakers slapped against the sidewalk, soles thinning, while beside her, his polished shoes, though dulled by rain, still shone with wealth. The contrast made her uneasy. At the school gate, Luke waved goodbye and darted in, leaving the 2 adults standing in silence. She finally asked, "What exactly do you do? You don't look like someone who belongs on my street." He hesitated, eyes narrowing slightly.
"I run a business. I just got promoted, actually." "What kind of business?"
"Corporate." He cleared his throat. "Mostly logistics, finance, that sort of thing." He said it casually, but the vagueness made her suspicious. She crossed her arms. "So you're one of those men in high offices who never have to worry about rent or groceries." Something in her tone pricked him. He saw her dignity, the way she stood tall even with tired eyes. He wanted to tell her everything, but revealing he was the new CEO of Stonebridge Enterprises, the same company whose name appeared faintly on the old work badge tucked inside her drawer, felt impossible in that moment. He wasn't ready. Instead, he said, "Let me buy you breakfast, please." At first, she refused. Pride stiffened her voice. But when he suggested a cafe just 2 blocks away, the smell of roasted beans and fresh bread tugged her son's words back into her chest. "Mum, can we get milk?" She nodded reluctantly. Inside the cafe, warmth wrapped around her like a blanket. The glass cases shimmered with pastries, thick sandwiches, and bowls of fruit she hadn't been able to afford in months. She almost turned to leave, but he placed a hand gently on the counter, ordering without hesitation 2 croissants, scrambled eggs, fresh orange juice, and a steaming latte. Sarah sat across from him, her eyes downcast. "This is too much." "You don't even know me. I know enough," he said simply. "I know you gave a stranger a place to sleep when you had almost nothing. Not many people do that." The food arrived, steam curling upward. She hesitated, but hunger won, and soon she was eating faster than she wanted him to notice. His gaze softened. She reminded him of someone, his own mother, long gone, who had once worked 2 jobs while he studied late nights. Then came the re-hook, sharp and sudden. A man in a crisp suit strode into the cafe, his tie perfectly knotted. He spotted the stranger instantly.
"Sir, we've been looking for you."
"The board's waiting. The driver's outside." Sarah froze, fork halfway to her lips.
"Sir, board?"
"Driver!" She looked between them, her chest tightening. The stranger's jaw flexed. He set his cup down and finally stood.
"I'll be there in a moment." The suited man stepped outside, leaving a trail of questions behind. Sarah's voice broke. Who are you really?"
His eyes met hers, conflicted. He wanted to tell her everything, but not here, not with the weight of expectation pressing down.
"I'm someone who doesn't want to forget this morning," he whispered.
Then he placed money on the table, enough to cover not just breakfast, but far more, and walked toward the waiting car. Sarah sat there stunned, Luke's absence making the silence louder. She clutched the bills, hands trembling. Outside the window, she saw him step into a black car with tinted glass, its emblem gleaming like a secret she wasn't meant to see. Her throat tightened. She whispered to herself, "What have I let into my home?" The rain had stopped, but inside her chest a storm still raged. She had no idea if he was a threat, a blessing, or both. Only that her life had shifted in ways she could no longer control.